Hello and welcome everyone in a new episode of Women Wisdom Hub with me, Amira.
And me, Caroline.
Hello. In today's episode, we would like to welcome Geraldine Marsh, who would like to be known as Gerry, who is a psychotherapist, well experienced, as well as nutritionist and a coach, wearing all these different hats. On top of that, she is more than happy to share with us her experience of being a professional woman, being a family woman, and at the same time wearing the hat of ADHD and working with the clients who have ADHD. So welcome, Gerry.
Hi, good to be here.
Lovely to have you as well, Gerry. So Gerry, a lot of our viewers and ladies, especially with more awareness out now of neurodiversity, I think we're in an era where there is a lot of awareness around neurodiversity in the workplaces, as well as within family kind of units as well. ADHD, or for a lot of you who kind of don't know what ADHD is.
Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Hyperactive disorder, lovely, thank you.
ADD, attention deficit, without the hyperactive.
That's right, yeah. Because I know some viewers, they might actually wonder about these abbreviations we were using. So I think it would be lovely, Gerry, if we could maybe kick off a start with you, telling the viewers about your personal journey with it, and, sort of share a little bit about what is it sort of ADHD means to you as a kind of a diagnosis.
Well, it's interesting that I think more is known about ADHD now and understood, but generationally, a generation ago, it wasn't really understood. There was very little vocabulary around it. And so in some ways, it was quite possible to have it and not be diagnosed.
That's
why a lot of adults are coming forward and mature adults, women coming forward, suddenly it can feel quite, revelatory when they read about the symptoms and manifestations of ADHD, to sort of think, well, that's me. Funny enough, there's a comedian who said, I used to think I had a personality until I was diagnosed with ADHD, and now I realise I'm just a checklist of symptoms. And actually, when the penny dropped for me, it felt like that. It felt like, my goodness, so this is where this daydreaming, unfocused, impulse-driven, spontaneous person comes from, who can't concentrate or suddenly concentrates a lot, who has rejection sensitivity, who can, have bursts of energy and then feel overwhelmed, who then has burnout. It was like a whole collection. It felt like a whole collection of sort of symptoms. And I thought that's who I was, as opposed to how my brain was working and how my brain was processing information. So, but it can be really revelatory. And from that point of view, I'm very grateful that people post their stories and talk about it. Because, I think interestingly, I had already trained as a psychotherapist and was beginning to see people with neurodiversities. And you kind of wonder, how did I get that far into life and struggle with things for decades without actually realising? But that is totally possible. But what is good, I think, is when you understand, you can create strategies for yourself.
Absolutely.
This is the importance of understanding what it is, because you continue to struggle with the same things, or you don't have a good relationship with yourself. There's a quote about, we lash out at the parts of ourselves that hold us back, that we perceive to hold us back. And that's what can happen, that you can sort of get angry or frustrated with parts of yourself. And then, of course, that is just not good. It's not good for relationship with yourself.
Absolutely. And it sounds to me from what you're saying, Gerry, is that you kind of adopted more of a kind of, it was first validating to you to know that, when you got the diagnosis, that actually, like you said, it was kind of more validating, and it's almost like revelation of actually, this is why sort of, some of these things started to make sense. But then you were more accepting of it than actually getting angry at why this is happening to me. You were more accepting.
Yes. To value who you are is massively important.
Yeah. Is that uniqueness, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm just wondering, do you feel that this has kind of impacted your professional journey and kind of made you more sort of interested to explore psychotherapy, or was kind of your passion to psychotherapy was already part of things, was always there?
Well, I have a real keen interest in seeing neurodiverse clients because, I really empathise with their experiences, and I want to validate them and, celebrate who they are and change that relationship with themselves. Because, yes, it can be frustrating. There are things about myself that I feel frustrated with. In my youth, I can give you some examples. I can remember my very first counselling session.
Yeah.
And turning up in winter with a pair of flip-flops on and no coat. And the therapist gently kind of saying, I noticed you got flip-flops on. And because the thinking ahead bit wasn't happening. It just was not happening. I wasn't thinking about what the weather was going to be like the next day. She didn't exist. It was just sort of actually, and that also points out the importance of self-care with ADHD, because that could be lacking. Like somebody with ADHD may either, for example, not be thinking about food or meals at all, or suddenly get hyper-focused about food. So, it's about kind of understanding those patterns of behaviour.
Yes. Yeah. And I suppose, like you were saying earlier, Gerry, as well, having the understanding of how they play, sort of some of these behaviors and kind of, sort of way of thinking, but also using some strategies to help you manage these. And I think you've mentioned, earlier about the importance of kind of, using these strategies. And I'm just wondering, what strategies do you think helped you to kind of balance things, both at work and in your, sort of family life?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I have to exercise, right? I love dancing. I love walking. Nice. It really sort of evens out my sort of stress biology, if you like. I feel calmer for that. I'm going to say the classic, which is reminders, because I will have a lot of thoughts all at the same time, all wanting attention. And so therefore the important things need to be I need to remind, and then I have reminders for the reminders. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make a lot of sense. Because a lot of people with ADHD, they do talk about, finding it difficult with the flow of thoughts to kind of almost focus on one thing, but also they struggle with feeling overwhelmed when there is more than kind of one task they need to be sort of, it's sort of juggling. That can make them overwhelmed. So that makes a lot of sense for you to use these kind of lists, isn't it?
And
to help with that.
Overwhelm is real. It's really interesting because I guess the other thing here is we're in relationship, in works, at home and everything, and for other people, when you get overwhelmed, it might just seem like you're not doing anything, and actually, this having open conversations with the people around you is also important.
Yeah.
To be able to articulate what's happening for you. I might go through some burst of, productivity, and then it gets too much and it feels a bit like a car crash. Everything comes to a halt and you kind of go into a state of freeze for a while.
Yeah.
But what that actually means, for example, is you might have to find your own work pattern, for example. Yeah. So, as I work for myself, I can be understanding about the fact that I might only produce 10% in one day and 200% in the next.
Yes.
It's absolutely fine. Be kind to yourself, be compassionate, be understanding, and you're more likely also to get over that sort of freeze state that you get into.
That's right. Yeah. Which in a way it kind of is sort of, it's your way of trying to balance things, isn't it? Balance work, balance your family life and responsibilities, which can be sometimes challenging. What do you find as, professional psychotherapist, with that diagnosis of ADHD? What do you find, Gerry, the most challenging when you're trying to balance out, your work responsibilities, family responsibilities, and social expectations? What do you tend to find most challenging?
Well, I mean, I'd say I've had some interesting conversations with neurodiverse counsellors, because what happens is there's still a fear of stigma, and so some extremely talented, competent therapists will not divulge any neurodiversity because of fears around their competence, when they are extremely capable, high-performing professionals. So when I have conversations, because our profession is a reflection of society, in society there is still stigma about it. I mean, I've spoken to people who think that neurodiversity is a mental health condition. Neurodiversity, it is a way that your mind processes. So, you can be neurodiverse, and it doesn't, it's okay.
Absolutely.
To be, I'm a very happy individual.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think I'm glad you've mentioned this, Gerry, because that just goes to show how massive potential people with neurodiversity have. And sending that message to those who are watching this episode out there, whether they're females or males with neurodiversity, is actually, these challenges we all face, whether with an actual neurodiversity issues or not. Sometimes we're kind of all united in some of these challenges. So having, being a neurodiverse, it's not about, this kind of being isolated or sort of kind of view ourselves as kind of a special group. It's actually just part of life challenges, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it comes with some upsides, some lovely qualities. I think in this profession, I think it makes me quite intuitive. Because you're picking up it instead of it being, this is another analogy that I love, that I've heard, that it's a bit like, those coloured pens with the nibs, with different colours, that you're trying to push all the colours up at the same time. So instead of it being about not being able to focus, you're actually trying to focus on too many things. But actually, when you're in a relaxed state, what actually is happening and you're processing is that you're processing a lot of information. And I think this is what adds up to intuition.
Yes.
That you're sitting there and you're in a calm place at the same time as taking information in. And so that does make you intuitive. My poor daughter hates this, because daughters want secrets, like they want to keep their secrets.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I pick up on something with her and I think, well, you're not telling me the thing. And then I think, I know what it is that you're not telling me. And then she's looking at me and she's thinking, oh, God, it looks like Mum's rumbled me about this thing. She says, and then I say something like, well, I'm just waiting for you to tell me because I already know.
It makes it hard to hide things from Mum, isn't it? But I suppose as well, with this kind of, flow of information processing, it makes, people with ADHD quite creative as well.
Yeah. That, I mean, when you work for yourself, that's a real asset. I mean, I have to admit that when I've worked for organisations, it's tricky because, for example, what you might do is you might go to the end point, you rush to the end point of what it is that they want, and then you find your method to get there. And they say, well, hang on a minute, we've got these systems and methods that you have to follow. And actually, my mind just wants to go to the end point and find my own system. It's creative, but it might not be what someone else has come up with. That's the upside and downside of it.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I am. Thank you, Gerry, for the kind of taking us through your journey. And I think Caroline has some kind of more questions as well for you.
Yeah, just a few more, Gerry. Just a few more. But yeah, it's been fascinating learning about your ADHD journey. Yes, and we've already kind of mentioned it about ADHD can come with unique strengths such as creativity and empathy, and talked about intuition. And I suppose just thinking about how you harness those traits how do you think you harness those traits in your therapy practice and in your daily life?
Therapy is a little bit like an improvisation. Then what I mean by that is you don't know what the client is going to say. So therefore, you don't know how you're going to respond until they say what they say. And then, of course, then you're thinking up your response. So the whole thing is an improvisation. So from that point of view, you could say that it is creative. It's the art of the mind. It's not the science of the mind. It's the art. And art is something different. Art is about expression. And it is gaining a sense of somebody, their feelings, their emotions. Also, if you're used to reading, if you have hyper focus and you're kind of used to reading people, this could be a good, again, trait taken into the positive. So, there is this idea about ADHD feeling very similar to child trauma, for example, and the hypervigilance that comes. But actually, hypervigilance is also ability to observe and watch, etc. Or you could say in the therapy room, what's actually happening is when you are in a relaxed state and this is happening, you're actually gaining an awful lot of information about your client very quickly. Also, my emotional memory is good. If conversations are embedded in emotion, I remember them very well. And I'm presuming that is that's more of an aspect of it, I think.
I love that idea of improvisation, and because the three of us are therapists, aren't we? And I've never kind of thought about it that way, about improvising. But I guess, to me, that sounds kind of exciting, really, when you're in a therapy room, just being able to have that quality to improvise, because therapy can be quite structured, I suppose, can't it, depending on what type of therapy you do, for example, cognitive behavioural therapy. But having that space to improvise and, to really sort of sit and be with the client, but have that sensitivity and memory to emotion. Yeah, I mean, they sound like great gifts that you have, that your clients benefit from in the work that you do with them.
This probably also feeds in a little bit to which modality I work with. So, for example, it's not a structured one like mentalisation-based therapy or even CBT, although I do use CBT. But, I think psychodynamic probably allows more space for exploration in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a therapist, Gerry, and as a woman, what advice do you think you could give to women who maybe have a diagnosis of ADHD or might even think that potentially they could have ADHD, who might be feeling overwhelmed or misunderstood in their personal or professional life? What kind of advice do you think you'd give them?
As a therapist, I wouldn't give them any advice. I'd explore their experience. I'd validate their experiences. I'd tune into their experiences, because this is going to be resonating throughout their entire lives, in their relationships, in their social life, in their work. So, to understand the effects, the fuller effects, that's more than one conversation. That's a few conversations. And that might be about becoming more articulate, owning it more, becoming more articulate with loved ones, for example, this is a real thing. I mean, I still have people in my family who don't accept this. They don't, they're quite scathing about it, that it's some kind of fabrication. ADHD is just some kind of made up term, that people give themselves to. I don't know why would you? But, so we would explore those things. We'd explore also the impact on their learning. Like, for example, I left school at 15 with 3 O-levels. I have 3 masters. So the school thought she's just stupid. So it failed me in essence. But, to find methods to enable people back into education, for example, to redefine themselves, as being articulate and intelligent and able to ask what they want from relationships, to make, a work situation understand what they need, what they can't, what they might need help with, what their strength is. These would be a lot of exploratory conversations.
Yeah. And space to reflect on all of that.
Yeah. Because at the first part of my chaotic life where I didn't achieve very much, and the second part of my life, so much more.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gerry. That's so valuable, all of this that you're sharing with us today and with people listening. And just kind of a last question, really, Gerry. What one lesson do you think you've learned through your journey with ADHD that you wish every woman struggling with similar challenges could hear? What one lesson do you think you've learned?
Well, typically, I want to make that into about 10 lessons or 20 ideas spring up when you say that. It's almost like difficult to trace down, this is what happens, though. A lot of ideas have been generated by that one question. But, I guess what it's bringing up for me now is to value and appreciate who you are, create a loving relationship with yourself, support yourself. You live with you all your life. So therefore, if you have a good relationship with yourself, it's going to be a heck of a lot of a lovelier journey, put it that way. So I think that's part of it. Accept that part of yourself.
Thank you, Gerry, for sharing all that you've shared with us today, with myself and Amira and anybody who's listening into Women Wisdom Hub podcast. And we really, really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Amira, do you want to say anything as we sort of head towards saying goodbye?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to echo what Caro said, Gerry, thank you so much for coming today and for sharing, your lovely sort of insight and experience about this. I think it's really nice what you've actually reflected on the last about, when you said about, you're going to have yourself to live with. So it's about, sort of being happy and accepting to yourself. And I think that's quite powerful to a lot of, people who are listening to this. So thank you. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
And from all of us at Women Wisdom Hub, goodbye. And we hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. And thank you so much, Gerry, again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.